And we are back with the next session here at MeasureSummit, and I'm happy to have with me right now Brad Redding from Elevar. For those of you who don't know Brad, he is an expert in e-commerce analytics, and he founded his first SaaS company in 2008, where he built the tech to match shoppers to retailers through dynamic personalization. He then went on to help and build analytics implementations and tracking foundations for brands like Rothy's, Rebecca Minkoff, and Autodesk. In 2017 then, he co-founded Elevar, which of course helps Shopify store owners automate data collection and offers server-side conversion tracking. Over 6,000 Shopify brands use Elevar for their tracking needs, and I heard some really good things from colleagues of mine when it comes to implementing tracking onto a Shopify store. But Elevar is not just a software, because Brad does a great job of actually helping other people out understand the world of analytics and data all around, and he shares his knowledge on platforms like YouTube, the Elevar blog, and his conversion tracking playbook podcast. So check those out as well. And we have him here and on the MeasureSummit stage as well. So welcome, Brad.
Thanks for having me. You made me feel really old going back to 2007 when I first started, but yeah, pleasure to be here and excited to share everything that I know in the next 30 minutes.
Right. Yeah, e-commerce is a really interesting field. I think a lot of people who first get in touch with analytics, they first have an e-commerce store, and the use case is just there so much. So there's a lot of cool things that you can do in tracking and in e-commerce store. Maybe give us a quick overview of what you are going to talk about today.
Yeah, so Julian, the plan for today is to talk about my tracking and analytics lessons working with Shopify the last 5 years. It's a culmination of learning lessons, whether it's through just general data layer practices and headless sites and landing pages and server-side tracking and the cookie apocalypse and everything in between, but trying to really bring that down into 10 or so concise learning lessons that will help anyone that's watching, listening, or even the replay if you are managing Shopify sites and brands and tracking for direct-to-consumer brands. Hopefully, you'll pick up at least 3 or 4 tips that you can apply to your own methodology and conversion optimization practice.
Yeah, all right. This sounds really interesting. I think there are a lot of Shopify store owners out there, as Shopify is one of the big players in the scene. And we are looking forward to hearing from you. So take it away.
All right. I'm just going to jump into it. So we are going to talk about 10 tracking and analytics lessons from Shopify. And the big thing here is my promise to you watching is I am going to share everything that I know in a reasonable time frame, but share everything that I know in the next 30 minutes. And if you've seen a webinar in the past from myself, this is going back 4 years. I use the same slide and I keep the same promise as I sharing my knowledge, and hopefully it helps you. So a quick background on myself. My wife would kill me if she saw this picture because my sons are now 2 years old and 3 years old. The youngest one was a COVID baby, where he was born February, right before COVID started. But anyways, my 2 sons, I've been in e-commerce for 15 years, worked with thousands of direct consumer sites, founded Elevar, which is my second SaaS business, about 5 years ago. My personal background, I'm an analytics, data, and CRO junkie. And I now have a new podcast where, again, it's sharing everything that I learned and know in our world of analytics and tracking. Really quickly about Elevar, just for context on where some of these learning lessons will be coming from. We're essentially a segment for Shopify. That's an easy way to explain us. We manage server-side conversion tracking for Shopify. When we first came on the scene 4 or 5 years ago, we were primarily known as the data layer app or GTM app for Shopify, which we still offer that. But as you all know, things change and evolve, and we need to evolve as well as a business. We really do 3 main things still. We build a data foundation. We help enable client-side tracking via GTM and also Shopify with some of their new enhancements. And like I said, we have our server-side source and destinations. So that is about us. Let's get into it. All right, so I had to make a little TM, a little mountain here, MeasureSummit mountain. Today, I'm going to focus on our data foundation, pixel power, and insights. And I'm going to start stacking from the bottom here as I go through some of these lessons. And we'll see what you think. And if you have questions or anything, feel free to drop them in the chat and we can answer them as well for you. So number one, accuracy is in the eye of the beholder. So this is one where if you are an agency, a brand owner, a freelancer, etc., we many times hear the question, I just want my data to be accurate. But that is a very subjective and obscure way to describe what you want. So for example, does accurate data mean transactions match them 100%? But if they have no attribution data, then it'll all be direct none if we're just talking Google Analytics. Or if it's Facebook and there's no advanced matching parameters, then you won't be able to match conversions back to clicks or views. Does accurate data mean more paid channel attribution? So instead of having attribution to direct, organic, or referrals, does a brand or do you want to see more channel attribution to your paid channels? Are landing pages accurate and sessions aren't splitting? Is geolocation data correct? Which we've seen over the last couple of months with the iOS 15.5 plus releases, where we're starting to see that IP obfuscation really obscure our geolocation data that we can get in GA. Does accurate data mean I just want to see product conversion rate by my parent product? So starting to get into some of the Shopify nomenclature. So instead of seeing breakdowns by variants, we want to see by parent product. And ultimately, accurate data equals easy funnel analysis. So this is another common one that we come across. So the reason why I want to put this first is I start stacking things on top of here. Some other learning lessons is hopefully this will help you understand how to ask better questions. It's very easy to make assumptions based on what we know and our own personal experience, but start asking your customers, your brand owners, project owners, etc. Ask them what they want to get out of their data. So what questions do you need to answer from your data today? What reports does your team rely on today? What do you wish you could report on? And this will allow you to extract exactly what they're looking for, and you can tie that back to your data accuracy. Because what you assume is accurate data, there might be a single report or data point that, again, a project owner, brand owner is responsible for, and we miss the mark. That means we ultimately miss the mark and we don't implement accurate tracking, even if we have 100% conversion accuracy and our attribution is great, etc. So starting at the end. All right, so I'm going to jump into, it's still a buzzword. We've been in Headless, the Headless space for, almost 4 years. We actually built a Headless site 4 years ago, Strivetkin. If you aren't familiar with Headless at this point, I'll just give a 5-second overview. It's essentially decoupled front end, back end. You will see the Shopify will handle the checkout. So if it is a Headless site, you will typically see the primary domain will be on www, so www.strivetkin.com, and then the checkout would be on checkout.strivetkin.com or whatever subdomain you choose. But essentially, Shopify doesn't own the front end of the site except once you get into checkout and sometimes account pages or login pages. If you are curious, you can use browser extensions like Wappalizer, Builtwith, etc. to just try to understand if you see Contentful or Prismic or Builder.io as a CMS platform, that would generally tell you that it is likely a headless site, especially if you see that Shopify checkout. All right, so gotchas. I think Simo was probably one of the first that shared his article on the Ghost Referral single page app years ago. And this still exists today for headless sites and headless Shopify. And this is one that even today, even though there's more and more documentation, trainings out there about this problem, we still see it over and over again where a brand will launch, and to be frank, many times tracking becomes an afterthought, or, hey, we'll get that taken care of the day before launch. And if you are in the space like I am, you know that many times a day is not enough time to get it right. So this is one that we see often, a very easy way to see if you have a ghost referral. I'm going to walk through 2 different ways to pull this out of GA. One, just do it before and after, and you can just look at Google, look at how many sessions, transactions have gone from Google paid search and have moved to Google organic. You can also use the MCF channel report in Universal Analytics to find this as well. You can use custom segments. You can create a user-based segment and look at a path where we go from Google paid search to Google organic. And essentially what that will give us here is a segment that'll filter down our client IDs that match that. And you can even go one step further of including a filter on this where sessions equal 2, transactions equal 1. And you can just pick a single day. So just pick a single day and then start diving into each of the client IDs. And ultimately, this is essentially what it looks like, where you will see, if we were to expand this, you would see a paid search where there might be 3, 4, 5 hits sent to GA. And then at the same timestamp, there is a switch to organic search. I'm not going to go into the nuance of why. There, again, Simo's article and others go into that. But this is how you would diagnose a ghost referral that is impacting GA. And it's not just Google paid search. It's going to impact all of your channels. Some other lessons with Headless Shopify sites. And by the way, with Headless Shopify, with their rollout of Hydrogen, which is Shopify's native headless framework, there are going to be more and more stores that are building quote unquote headless sites. But instead of being custom, they are likely to be more on the Hydrogen framework, which as of today still has has the potential for a lot of these same issues. So with our marketing pixel issues, something we see quite a bit is affiliates. So think impact radius, share, sale, etc. They rely on picking up a query parameter in the URL, storing it in a cookie, and then passing that in the conversion tag. If you are a headless site, I've seen some trackers, they are only passing cookies on a top level domain. So it actually won't go from the www to the subdomain and checkout. If you are on a legacy recharge checkout, that also will break. So there are circumstances here when you go through, if you are testing, QAing, etc., is make sure you're going through each of your trackers, seeing what they are trying to fetch and store, and make sure that process is still working as expected. Chances are it may not, and you may need to do some customization in GTM. Another issue we see is our split implementation of GTM and hard-coded tracking. So with a headless site, if you install a Shopify app, so if you install Elevar, you are not installing our tracking through the Shopify app onto the headless site. It's because it's completely decoupled. So this is where you end up having a custom implementation on the headless site, and then you have a Shopify app that powers checkout. And these need to be built and implemented in a uniform manner. And what I mean by that is just think about your triggers in GTM, your product IDs, your content IDs across channels, so Facebook, Google Ads, etc., ensuring that you're setting and sending the same data. So for example, if you are passing product SKU in your add to cart event on the headless part of the site, but you're sending product ID in checkout, you'll have a mismatch. So you'll have a mismatch in that product matching in Facebook or Google Ads. Other issues are UTMs captured for attribution tools. So if you're using Northbeam, Rockerbox, Triple Whale, etc., and potentially using headless sites as landing pages, you'll need to make sure that you're capturing UTMs potentially through a URL decorator, etc. And then cookie transfer across subdomains, top level domains, which I touched on. That is another thing that you'll need. While cookies still exist, you'll still need to ensure that you track and make sure that's in place. A few other last issues on the headless side. If you don't have a data layer on a headless site, then no product data. So think about your product view, your add to cart. If you don't have that data layer implemented on the headless site, your tags won't fire. So you won't have enhanced e-commerce data in GA, GA4, Facebook dynamic remarketing, etc. As I mentioned, Shopify apps won't work on a headless site. The root page change, so it's not a real page load. So you'll need to make sure if you are analyzing page views, that you set those appropriately. And that could be based on history change, or if you have a custom event that you're pushing to act like a page view. Waiting on, this is another one, waiting until the last minute for tracking, which I mentioned initially. This never works. It always takes longer than you anticipate. And then the session splitting is a real phenomenon. All right, on to landing pages. So landing pages in Shopify, this is also one that has been growing, which I would say over the last year, especially as the post-iOS impact on our macroeconomic conditions that we see today, there's just a bigger need for brands to have high-performing prospecting campaigns. So this is leading to, we're going to spin up landing pages and we're going to run a bunch of traffic, prospecting traffic, and just tweak and tune and test and optimize So we're seeing more brands that have landing pages in addition to their Shopify theme. So with this, it's making sure if you have a subdomain and let's say you have server-side tracking implemented where you might be leveraging the Shopify session, the cart session is making sure that you, again, are using the URL decorator in that handoff to your Shopify site. Can pixels pass cookies across domains? So if your landing page is on a top-level domain that's separate from your Shopify site, is ensuring you have that cross-domain tracking. I would tend to recommend you try to go the subdomain route versus a cross-domain if possible. But we do see more brands that are doing advertorial type sites where they're driving traffic to like an online magazine or blog, and then that's promoting their product and then driving to the Shopify site. So again, they want to track that performance as well. Is the landing page acting like a product page? So is your landing page, does it look like a product page where you have a product and add to cart, or different options for add to carts or upsells? If you don't build that data layer into the landing page and you're driving traffic to that page, you will miss out on add to cart events. So think about Facebook add to cart events where they are going to power your dynamic remarketing campaigns. So when you're looking at landing pages, if you have that product functionality, is either build that in through GTM or build it into the landing page itself. Last but not least, if you're in Shopify and you've used it for quite a while and you've come across buy now buttons, it might be historically been the pain in your butt for tracking, because technically it's in an iframe if you're using the old buy now buttons, but there's more ways now to create dynamic links that'll automatically create a checkout and redirect the user based on them clicking add to cart. So when that happens, depending on how your tracking is set up, is this technically speaking, so this is a Shopify technicality, it is creating a new cart session. So when anybody lands on a Shopify site for the first time, Shopify creates a unique session, which is ultimately a unique cart for that user. And when the buy now button is being used, this will actually create a new one on the fly. So if you are leveraging order notes or anything like that in server-side tracking, this is an opportunity for that to break. All right, moving on to checkout customizations. All right, so some scenarios that we'll go through here. Subscriptions, so offsite versus unified checkout. Tracking one time versus subscription purchases. Global checkout, so think about Global E, Flow, and other international checkouts. Post-purchase upsells, and then Shopify platform changes. Subscriptions, these are the recharges, the Skios, order grooves, Smarter. There's more. Upscribe. Seems like there's more and more that come out every month. Understand if you are still using an off-site checkout. So if you are using the legacy recharge integration where a customer that purchases a subscription product goes through the recharge checkout, we all know that the GA and GTM integrations are lacking. We know the pixel integrations are lacking, so Facebook Conversion API will not work on that offsite checkout with recharge or others. So if you're using the native Shopify Facebook app, you'll need to either replace that with a tool like Elevar or others, or essentially create a separate process to append that Conversion API data with that offsite checkout. In some of these checkouts, the data available to rebuild a data layer are lacking. So as I mentioned with Headless sites, where you want to keep essentially the same object, your same purchase object on Shopify that you'd have on a Headless site, but same thing was with Recharge or some of these other legacy subscription checkouts, is if you are using a DL purchase event on Shopify, making sure that you have the DL purchase event on Recharge. Then look at the data. So are you using the order name or the order ID between those two? Are you using, think about currency codes. Are you using the shop currency? Are you hard coding the currency code? Are you sending product ID? So all of your variables within that transaction object is making sure those are similar as well. And typically it's not always a one-to-one match either. Last but not least, with subscriptions, if you are using server-side tracking, whether it's through a custom platform or a native platform, so let's say Impact Radius, if they have their own app for tracking, is making sure that order notes that are passed onto the order is there on that subscription order. So this is a little abstract, but if you've ever seen the right sidebar in a Shopify order, you'll typically see order notes, order tags, etc., that you can leverage for different tracking initiatives. When it comes to subscription analytics, this is another nuance that we see missed quite a bit. And let's just talk Facebook and Google Ads. If you have an offsite checkout, it's fairly easy. A legacy checkout, so it'd be off Shopify. It's fairly easy to have, hey, if someone goes through Shopify, it's a one-time order. If someone goes through Recharge, it's a subscription order. So you can do DL purchase and DL subscription purchase is how we used to do it. But if you are unified, so if everyone's going through the unified Shopify checkout, where a customer can purchase in a one-time order or a subscription order, that makes the process to split those to trigger a custom conversion based on that one-time or subscription purchase a little bit more nuanced. So with Facebook, there is a subscribe event. So this is telling Facebook that somebody signed up for a subscription. And then in Google Ads, we see very commonly a separate conversion action will be created for subscription signups, because you can infer that that lifetime value is worth more, so you're willing to bid more, pay more, etc., for campaigns that drive more subscription signups. We also see this analysis in Google Analytics and GA4. So GA funnel analysis is a common question that we'll get is what's performing better? People that go through my one-time purchase or go through subscriptions. So if someone lands on a product page, they add to cart for one time, they proceed to checkout, complete their purchase. What does that funnel look like versus somebody who goes to a product page, adds the subscription item to cart, proceeds to checkout, and then completes a purchase? And then when you start adding in, okay, if someone adds the one-time product purchase to the cart, and then you upsell them in the mini cart or in the actual cart page, so upsell the user to a subscription version of that product to save 10% or 20%, what does that funnel look like? So tracking this can be really powerful, drive powerful insights. Again, if it's your brand or if you are working for the brand, this can drive really powerful insights for experiments to run, what to default to on a product page. So you do default the add to cart to be the one-time or subscription. And especially with GA4 and the funnel builder, this can allow you to create these a lot easier, create this type of analysis a lot easier than you could in Universal Analytics historically. So this is a little trick how to split on the unified checkout, how to look just using, you don't have to be an Elevar customer to use this. You can just look for a JavaScript variable on the thank you page. If it has a selling plan associated to it, that essentially means that the product purchased is a subscription. And then you can create your true false trigger to assign that to your subscribe event or the Google Ads subscription event. All right, global checkouts, not to be confused with just global E. I'm repeating myself a little bit here with the subscription items, but this is a picture of the global E checkout. In global E's case, it's an iframe, or technically that lives within the concept of a page, so a Shopify page. So you can change between currencies and countries, etc. But the checkout process, again, it's not going through the Shopify checkout, it's going through global E. So you have to recreate your own data layer for global E. Same thing, make sure you have the DL purchase or whatever your event is on Shopify. Use that same data layer, nomenclature, object structure, variables, etc. With global E specifically, by default, they don't unlock all data. So if you're looking for customer information, you actually have to ask for that data to be unlocked. Otherwise, it will return as null or undefined. Verifying the currency accuracy, this is a big one. So make sure that your tags aren't hard-coded to a specific currency. Make sure you are using that dynamic currency in each platform. All right, one of my favorites and the least favorites, post-purchase upsells. So in the last year, Shopify moved all upsell products into the unified checkout. So instead of the upsell going off to an offsite cart hook checkout or Zipify checkout, You are now all in app. So think rebuys and again, cart hook, Zipify, etc. There is a new post-purchase page settings that some of you may be aware of. If you don't add any tracking here and you just leave it in the order status page, you are losing conversions. It's just simple as that. The reason why it is, I've yet to see a brand that has upsells where, let's say I purchase my outfit and I land on that post-purchase upsell page that's saying, hey, you just bought a shirt and pair of shorts. Do you want to buy socks? 100% of people aren't going to take that upsell. So they're either going to exit from that page. A small percentage might say no thanks and decline that, which would then take them to the final thank you page and have your tracking trigger at that point. But it's going to be a small percentage. So this is the opportunity to try to ensure that your main purchase event always triggers. So be sure that you have your post-purchase page tracking set up. And if somebody makes it to the final thank you page, so if they accept that upsell or decline it, you have logic that you can use to manage and basically control if you want to send another upsell event. Do you want to send nothing? So there's a matrix decision here that you need to make on how you want to manage your tracking. Most of the time we'll see for Facebook and Google ads, everyone wants to send a purchase event when they hit that initial upsell page. So after they enter their credit card and click complete purchase for that pair of shorts and shirt, and then they handle the upsells essentially individually. The other nuance with a post-purchase tracking is GTM loads in an iframe. So preview mode doesn't work. You have a 500 millisecond script execution time limit. So this is one that not many know about. That Google Ads essentially doesn't work. So if you're trying to trigger Google Ads conversion tracking and post-purchase page, it typically doesn't, or a very small percentage of the time it finishes. So this is where you won't see a complete breakage where your conversions go to 0. But if you're expecting 100, you might see 30. So it's like you scratch your head like, what the heck's going on? And it's typically because of this limit where if the script doesn't finish in time, Shopify essentially just continues on. And post-purchase upsells also lacks customer data. Last but not least, in the platform changes, we have split testing checkout flows. So keep your eye out for Shopify changes. They just rolled out a new checkout. It's a slight change in their URL and the way they're passing order IDs on the thank you page. You have other checkouts, so offsite checkout services like Facebook Shop, etc. And then we have the WebPixel API that's coming soon. Soon as in rolling out completely for everybody. All right, so let's get into Pixel Power as we move on from Data Foundation. So with our Pixel Power, what is marketing pixel tracking? Very simply, it's not just purchase events. It could be add to cart events like we talked about with subscriptions. It could be page view is a conversion. It could be product view is a conversion, etc. So a common question that we've gotten over the last couple of years, why can't all tracking move server side? Why can't we just take everything from our GTM web container and move it to server side tracking? The answer is 90% of channels don't support server side tracking. They're relying on the browser to do their own fingerprinting. They don't have the dev resources to build out a proper API because an API has to respond and give a thumbs up, thumbs down when you're sending data to it. And some are just unaware of the scale of how much data they're actually missing. But the good news is this is getting better. I know we are evangelizing with channels, and you can see recently Twitter, Pinterest rolled out their own conversion APIs. And this is not an if for a channel, it's just a when. Every channel is going to move here eventually. So your options for server-side tracking and client-side tracking with Shopify, you can wait and keep everything client-side for those channels that don't have it. If it's just an image pixel, you can try to use the GTM server-side container for rebuilding a pixel hit. You can wait for native apps to build their own. So think the native Shopify Facebook app or the Google Ads app. You can look to server-side tracking solutions, or you can have site-wide server-side tracking. This last comment was you can have server-side tracking for all events on Shopify, even though Shopify is a hosted SaaS. So this is a little bit of a nuance. You can do it. It gets into some technicalities that you can actually implement Shopify as an app. So it is possible, even though you don't physically own the server per se. I mentioned Shopify Web Pixels. So this is something that is new. This came out over the summer in development preview mode and is now available for most to start utilizing. And essentially, this is a couple of quick things on this. They have an event bus. So this is Shopify's data layer that you can subscribe to. So it'll have different events across the site. And it has some data that you can use in tags. So think product SKU, product price, etc. The big thing is in checkout. So tracking will eventually all move to the secure sandbox environment in the browser, where any third-party tracking will execute. So this is for privacy and security. See Magento checkout hacks from years in the past. So Shopify is really trying to get ahead of that and remove malicious trackers from being injected through GTM or other ways that might be scraping data that they are not supposed to. And to translate this is going to make extremely limited data that a tracker can fetch from the window. So there'll be a link that you can, if you haven't looked at this yet, on how to view more details on a WebPixel API, but it is fairly restricting, and it's going to be a long transition over the next year for many brands on Shopify. And effectively, it moves tracking from the checkout.liquid or the order status settings to this new feature. What is the impact of this? Will Google Tag Manager still work in checkout? How to handle consent compliance. So if you are using OneTrust, how to make sure that OneTrust is implemented properly in checkout if it's limited. What if the data that a tracker needs is not available? So if they're pulling specific information from the browser window that Shopify is not exposing through the WebPixel API, will that tracker essentially not work, or will it not be as effective? How to manage tracking in a non-checkout versus checkout. So if you can't use Google Tag Manager in the checkout, but you still want to use Google Tag Manager in the non-checkout, does that mean you now have two different ways to handle tracking for the same channel? So this is still something that, again, over the next year, many brands are going to have to make that decision on how to manage this. It's going to be complex. This is a real mind map. This is a decision flow of when this is fully in place. What does this look like? What are the options for brands depending on what the channel needs and what the brand has to implement? So we'll all of this talk about data foundation, what to look out for, how to make sure you keep things unified if you're managing different shopping flows across Shopify and non-Shopify sites. Why does data accuracy matter? So inaccurate data can be expensive. Just something as simple as remarketing. If you are not sending the proper remarketing data while remarketing still exists, if you're not sending that data back, I will be remarketed to a product I did not look at. So you can easily infer that conversion rate for that campaign will go down. Going beyond standard events. So think about the subscription one-time purchase is a great example of creating, powering marketing channels with better data. So this is an older example I used with a customer that sells truck fittings, etc. So you basically say, hey, I drive a Ford F-150 and here's the year it was built in, etc. So a lot of this data you can capture, and this isn't just for remarketing. As we know, this is somewhat of a dying campaign type, but you can drive and push this data to Klaviyo, to your CRM, to your data warehouse, etc., even if they make a purchase, and then this will ultimately help you create better campaigns down the line to better enable that second and third purchase to maximize that LTV within the first 90 days. The other big reason around data accuracy and why it matters, the move to more automation in Facebook and Google and other platforms. So this is the formula for winning a Facebook ad auction. Your bid times your estimated action rates plus the user value equals the total value, and then Facebook will rank, and then the winning bidder, their ad will be served. The control that you have is around the estimated action rates. So this represents how likely Facebook thinks someone is going to take that action. So if a campaign you are targeting a purchase or an add to cart, they're going to use your previous data and your previous ads historical performance to come up with their estimated action rate. So the more data that you can verify that you're sending to Facebook, if you're only sending 90% of purchase conversions, get to 100. This will help your opportunity to win bids. So it will lower your ad costs, lower your CPMs, etc., and hopefully make you more money. And the more data, event data that Facebook has to match clicks to conversions, the more data Facebook has to calculate the probability of an event happening. So we don't want to end up in a learning limited status for your ad campaign, which is primarily, it's either an ad issue or it's a conversion tracking issue. Google Performance Max is new. So marketers are flocking to PMax, and we're seeing our brands, customers have great results with this. It just lets the machine do its thing. Machines are smarter than us, most of them at least. And the quote, WordStream has a great quote on this. Conversion tracking, I realize that's biased by me, but I didn't pay WordStream to put this in their doc on Performance Max. Conversion tracking is always important in a Google Ads account, but it's even more important in Performance Max because, again, we are relying on Google to do the heavy lifting versus us having to do manual targeting, manual campaigns, audiences, etc. When we think about affiliate and pay performance for data accuracy, the Headless example, I talked about click IDs from landing pages tracking performance. If tracking is missing, whether it's ad blockers or missing click IDs, this trickles down to affiliates who then threaten to pull links because they're sending traffic. They can see people converting, but they're not getting paid out. So this goes back to that accuracy of why in the current macro environment with high CPAs, these channels are critical to keep functioning at high conversion rates. Data accuracy gaps in Google Analytics. So we have coupon browser extensions that are stealing attribution at checkout. So if someone comes in through Facebook paid social, they use the Honeycomb extension, which resets their session to affiliate, Avant link, or whatever it might be. And now we are missing, if you're just used to that standard source medium report, you're not seeing proper attribution if you believe that someone clicking a coupon code in checkout is legit. Landing pages from Google Shopping. So this is another learning lesson with Shopify over many years. Landing pages from Google Shopping campaigns where the variance is in the product URL. If your theme is not set up to handle the redirect, so if someone clicks on that link, comes to the site, and then there's a redirect to set your base default setting, UTMs will be lost, so you won't see that Google paid search traffic in GA, and you potentially might lose some tracking with Google Ads. So this is something that you can fix within your theme. I mentioned the buy now attribution gap. This is another thing to look out for within Google Analytics. We have offsite payment methods. So this is something that we see with Ideal and others, where it routes users off of the Shopify checkout to log into their bank, etc. So in this case, typically you'll have to either handle conversion tracking through server-side webhooks, or fire that tracking on the order status page and remove that if first time access logic to just get that client-side tracking to work. So some of the fixes here as we get close to wrapping up. Server-side tracking with Google Analytics allows you to use Shopify's first touch UTM. So in the example that I used with the coupon Honey Chrome extension, you can use Shopify's UTMs that would have that Facebook paid social, so you don't have to rely on that affiliate source medium. Persist that variant in the URL to maintain your tracking. As I mentioned, for your offsite checkout, just using that thank you page or server side to better track and attribute conversions for your offsite payment customers. And then you can use GTM server side or Shopify cookies to extend the cookie lifetime. So maximizing or extending that 24-hour cookie lifetime for known trackers is important to you, then there are options for you to do that. And obviously consent is all wrapped around this and something that you would need to consider. All right, a few things to wrap up, just some tips here as we move up one step in our pyramid to the top of the pyramid, which is the insights. Number one, blending analytics and Shopify data. So Shopify and the thank you page exposes a couple variables, the customer lifetime value and the total order count that you can use. And you essentially use these in a tag in GTM, and you can create a simple lookup table or just send the raw data for the total order count and the custom dimension. You can do this in GA4 as well, obviously. But this will help you and help your brand and marketer customer look at a little bit more detailed and rich data in GA versus just source medium. So they can see based on channel, what channel is driving new purchases versus repeat. And you can even go one step further by going source, medium, and campaign, and looking at, are my prospecting campaigns actually reaching my existing customers and driving repeat purchases? So this is something that's fairly easy to set up. Again, these variables are available on the thank you page that you can use, or set these in your server-side tracking integrations. It's typically candy. This is like candy to a lot of marketers that didn't know you can actually get this data into GA, and it's pretty simple to set up. So if you're an analyst, do this and you'll win some big kudos. Last but not least, in our event tracking for conversion optimization, this is time and money. This is a time and money problem, and focus problem, and skill problem, probably more problems. But over the years, we see many brands don't have the team or the time to consistently leverage event tracking to drive better CRO programs. And as you all know, conversion rate optimization is long tail. It's not a do it for 3 months. It didn't work, so we're going to scrap it. It's just you have to do it over and over and over again, and learn and apply those learnings and understand what is going to convert, what doesn't convert, especially as seasonalities change. If you don't know what event tracking is, or if you're not sure what I'm referring to, it's just a more nuanced of what are people doing on site. So whether it's GA data or Hotjar or whatever you are using, it's just going beyond your basic standard reports. And the opportunity here is, if you can spend 80% of your time on insights, and brands that are focused more on conversion rate optimization today and that second and third purchase, it'll make you more valuable to the brand. And if you are the brand, it's going to make you more successful in scaling your business. So spending 80% of your time on insights and experimentation, instead of all of your time on auditing and setting up everything, and just find ways to become more efficient in tracking. Remember, the jobs that, at least in our world, customers and brands are trying to do, their job they're trying to do is not to implement tracking. The job they want to accomplish is reducing their cost per acquisition, increasing the return on ad spend, increasing conversion rate, and hitting their revenue and profitability goals. The tools that we've used over the last 5 years won't be the same for the next 5. My message is adapt, embrace change, and that's it. So thank you for listening. Hopefully this was helpful for everybody. You can visit our MeasureSummit URL. I'll have a list of all of the different links that I mentioned through here that you can look to for more research, like the Pixel API and splitting conversions, and a special offer for all of you. So that's it.
All right. Thank you very much, Brad. Applause from my side, at least. I think a lot of people out there learned quite a bit. I was, I love the MeasureSummit Mountain. We should make that a thing.
You can have that.
It says TM, but yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good. I was actually like quite disillusioned. I thought like, Shopify, I've worked with it a little bit, but I'm not a Shopify store owner. On the one hand, it's like, it's just another store. E-commerce, we can track that with Google Analytics and so on. But apparently there's so many nuances in the tool itself, especially when you work with Shopify then. And it seems to be getting harder. What's your opinion about this? Is it the new technologies obviously are something that always will be coming, but Shopify kind of sets out as this tool of being easy for starting an online store. And normally you would just put in your tracking ID in the backend and everything should be working, right? So what will we see in future? And do you see it becoming harder?
Yes. It's going to get harder, not necessarily because it's a Shopify problem per se. You think they have 2 million stores that they need to account for. I don't know, 30 to 40, 50,000 Shopify Plus stores. You have brands like Rothy's and Gymshark and others that are just massive brands. Then you have the startups. So it's such a wide gap of what do we need to implement that reasonably can meet goals for the majority. And most of the time, just plugging your tracking, whether it's a GA or Facebook channel, etc., for 80 to 90% of brands, that's going to work fine, because if you are not at scale yet and you're not spending thousands per day, month, etc., you're not really going to change your decision making on having 10% more data in GA. That's just the reality of it. But as your business becomes more complex and you are getting more robust and the way you're managing your different marketing campaigns, that's where the native integrations, they somewhat break. They don't break per se, but it just doesn't meet the needs that they're trying to do to scale. So that's one thing, is you're just scaling within the world of Shopify. Now we add on the Pixel API that, again, has its own set of constraints. We have everything that's happening in the world of privacy and consent management and browsers blocking tracking. And there's so many headwinds that are coming on in our world and everyone that's watching this, that, again, that is just directly going to impact Shopify and every other platform. So yeah, it's going to become more difficult, but in some ways, I think as we move to server-side tracking for all channels, that in some ways actually makes it easier, because you won't have those circumstances where, oh, somebody deployed a theme update and it broke my script, or I had 4 scripts doing the same thing in my order status page settings, or we launched a new theme and forgot to port over our tracking. Those circumstances will be gone, because if you're true server-side, everything is outside the theme. You're using webhooks, so you're a little bit more siloed and protected from a lot of those 911 emergencies that can pop up.
Yeah, definitely. I think that Shopify also as a system is predestined to normalize the data and have that data ready to pass on to something like a server-side implementation. Although right now it's still quite manual process of trying to piece it all together. Yeah. But that's where the future is probably going. Do you think that Shopify as a company, I mean, first of all, their customers are store owners, and obviously they want to make the experience as seamless as possible for the store owners. But do you think that they actually care about the tracking guys out there, or the analysts, the data guys that want to get as much data as possible, and think about them? I think they've gotten better a bit. Now with the Web Pixel API, at least they have thought about this problem and said, like, there's going to be a mess if we just going to do this Wild West. But at the same time, sometimes you feel like, it's a system for store owners. It's not built for analytics guys, right?
Yeah, they do. I mean, they're open for feedback and have reached out to us about various initiatives they've been rolling out over the last couple of years. Again, I think it's the balance of any platform, not necessarily just Shopify, but they know they need the community's help just to help build out whatever, like the Web Pixel API implementation, and reaching out to all their channel partners and technology partners, et cetera, to help them uncover the stones, turn over those stones that they didn't necessarily know to look for, didn't have time, et cetera. But I think it also goes to, there's a certain line that they don't need to cross over and manage every single use case for the thousands of channels that are out there. So again, it's that what's the MVP, or slightly past that MVP approach of, we have our base tracking, it works for 80% of our channels, but the other 20%, they will need to build something custom. I think that's a fair compromise for everyone, just because, I mean, Shopify would have to have a team of thousands that are just managing tracking for their stores and working with tech partners, et cetera. And again, with all the consent providers that are rolling out every single day, of having to build custom integrations for all of them as well.
True. So one last question, I guess, from my side is, like, if you would have a Shopify store and you would be running that, and obviously tracking, what would be your ideal setup for tracking? Would you say, I want to have server-side tracking, I want to use GA4, or what is maybe your ideal in terms of tracking for Shopify store?
I've been asked that question many times, but not exactly phrased the way you phrased it. I would say if I was starting out from scratch, so if I was $0, new brand, when it comes to Google Analytics and Facebook and Google Ads, et cetera, and I know I'm on a budget constraint, so I'm not funded, I don't have a VC, I'm using my own money, I'm trying to grow a store, I would use the native integrations. They're going to get me as far as I need to with minimal time. I don't need to sign up and pay for an app. I would focus all of my time and energy on outside of marketing. So let's assume you're going to have to spend a lot of time on marketing and campaigns and creative and all that. I would focus on conversion optimization. I would focus on understanding what my users are doing on the site. Why are they buying? Why are they not buying? And I would use that to continue to compound my marketing campaigns. Once I got to a certain point where, okay, I know I'm spending $5,000 a day or whatever it is in marketing, then I would make that step up to, okay, now I really want to make sure that all of my channels and campaigns are working for me, not against me or with me. And that's where I would move into server-side tracking. Just for that, that's the point about Facebook and Google ads with Performance Max. The more you can squeeze out of them, the better. But again, in the early days where every dollar really means something, that's where it's, and what's the ROI on that? My ROI might be better spent on Facebook creative testing or TikTok testing.
Definitely. I think Elevar can definitely also help with this if you're a Shopify store owner and thinking about setting up your tracking professionally. So to wrap this up, where can people find out more? I think there's so many more topics that we can talk about, obviously. But you have great resources out there and evangelizing, obviously, all of these topics that store owners should know about, but also tracking as a whole. So what are other sites, what are other places where people can find out more and follow you?
Yeah, if you are interested in our server-side tracking, again, our quote-unquote segment for Shopify setup, just visit getelevar.com. You can visit the MeasureSummit link as well for different deals, promos that we have. If you're a podcast person, I have the Conversion Tracking Playbook podcast, and that is very similar to this format. I will share things from the last couple weeks, and just try to, again, evangelize and spread the knowledge, that things that we are learning. And we also have a YouTube channel where there's a little bit more of a mix of conversion optimization, where we'll do some guest to test type of setups. But YouTube, podcast, and our website is where we live. And again, try to share as much as we can. With maybe TikTok will come sometime soon.
All right. Thank you, Brad, for being here. And back to you, Mercer.